Before you are a mother, a wife, a friend, a daughter, a sister, and everything else in between, you are your own. And I hope you start to make space for yourself more often.
Welcome back to the Taking Up Space podcast. So, this is the podcast where we amplify the voices of individuals who are unapologetically taking up space. So, it's me again, Jessica. Welcome back to the podcast. Last week we discussed in the last episode all things identity, and today we will be discussing getting your house in order. So I want you all to ponder what that means. I'm going to give you like 2 seconds. Right. So, getting your house in order. This episode was influenced by life experience of just, going through life. And what does, getting your house in order mean to me is really gathering all the things that matter to you personally, and also the things that you want to leave behind, and making sure they're organized. I'm a bit of a type A individual, right? So I love organizing. I love things matching and things having a home and a place for where they need to be. So yeah, why am I discussing this? I feel like in the Black community, we thrive sometimes on chaos. Don't shoot me. I feel like we tend to rise to the occasion whenever things happen in life. And I want us to grow and evolve, like my generation, to not only do better than the last generation, but what are we leaving for the next generation to come? So I found where the situation I experienced in the last few years, with the loss of my mother, things could have been handled a bit differently, but also there wasn't a lot of information out there with people that look like me discussing these topics. So I decided that I'm going to be the one to put myself out there a little bit and share some of the things I think is very important that we discuss with our families, with our parents, with our loved ones. And yeah, hopefully this lands to the right person, whoever might have experienced something like what I've experienced, and this could be of aid to you. So again, I've got my trusty phone, no note cards today, but yeah, I'm going to use my phone for a few notes that are very important for me to share with you guys today. So in my experience, I have seen that a majority of the Black community don't really have support when it comes to funeral costs. We see a lot of people using GoFundMe's or raising money amongst family to do send-offs for our loved ones. And usually, death comes to you by shock, but there's some people that, your loved one might have been sick for a prolonged period of time, or just they don't really think about it. They're like, oh, especially again in the African community specifically, they don't want to talk about death. Okay, that is not a conversation they want to talk about. They're like, oh my gosh, you're killing me before my time. So people need to realize that death is inevitable. One day, sooner or later, we will all pass away. And the Bible is very poignant where it says like a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children, for his house. So it's very important for us to get our house in order before that time comes. So one of the statistics that I found was in 2023, 20% of millennials ages 20 to 29 use GoFundMe which is, just in case nobody knows what GoFundMe is. GoFundMe is a platform where you could crowdfund money to raise money for anything. You could do it for your wedding, it could be anything. But the statistics in 2023 was 20% of millennials use GoFundMe for funeral expenses. And on the platform, this is one of the fastest growing categories. And that was 2023. So if you put that in perspective, if it's continuously growing, that is something that we actually need to highlight and say, okay, why is this the case? Are we not planning well for these incasities, or is it just that maybe we're just not earning enough? We have a lot of issues, especially in the UK, where, things are increasing, but salaries aren't increasing. So, which is understandable that not everyone will be able to afford these things. Then also, I think one thing that most people, especially if you have young children, it's very important for you to make these arrangements, especially if you are a single parent, or perhaps you know that you are terminally ill. Having an entrusted loved one or friends, because again, we spoke about your tribe, a community, and someone in your community or tribe that you will entrust to look after your kids. Many times, and you will never know if these people will do right by you when you pass on, but in good faith, you would hope that they will do right by your children. We see that sometimes the offspring of those that pass away early, they end up in care, and they don't have access to any assets or any support from any family. And sometimes it's really bittersweet, because also if they end up in care, it's usually, if there is remaining family, that the individuals that are the individuals who are the extended family may not have the means to look after those kids. So setting up your children for the future is very important, especially if they're young. I think we need to get through the mindset of just accepting that death is possible, but not saying that you're going to die today. But as soon as you start having children, honestly, as soon as you start having dependents, or you're married and you have a spouse, it is very intrinsic for you to think about that happening, so yes, one of the key things that I found out, especially in the UK population, only 30% of the population have life insurance. Like, that is very low. And from the statistics, majority of those, of the 30%, is men. So ladies, we got to do better. Please, we need to do better. Especially as, the Equality Pay Act and things like that, where we're starting to become, on the level playing field of earning with men. Try and put away, a few pennies, just not your pension, but also for those kids, if you have any, or for your dependents once you're married. So with life insurance, so that's step one with getting your house in order. Get life insurance. Once you're married, get life insurance. Once you have kid number one, if you don't have life insurance already, if you're not married or you are married, get life insurance. You can get a life insurance policy from £5 a month. That's a cheeky Chinese takeaway. That's a special fried rice. Okay, guys, if you can spend money on takeout, you can spare a £5. And I know it's hard, especially when maybe you're in between jobs and you're trying to cut down your direct debits. But if you're young and you're unmarried and whatever, cool. But you don't want to wait until the last minute. The more that you invest in it, the more money it accrues over time. Um, and there's different platforms like Vitality life insurance. They can, I think they are based on like fitness, being healthy. There's also poly.com, which is for mums. There's also Aviva. There's loads of different insurance companies, but there's different types of life insurance coverages as well. There's whole life, there's term life, which is depending on the age. I think it goes up to like 90 years old. There's also critical illness insurance, because one thing that most people end up doing is they only get life insurance once they find out that they're sick, which will raise the price of your life insurance. So it's key, if you start to as you want to go on, £5 a month is tangible. It's possible, right? So one of the things that I wanted to also stress is that if you do acquire a home, it's very, very important that you look at what your home insurance covers and what your life insurance covers, because what can happen is they can clash and then you won't be able to be covered by one. So looking at what each of them covers you for, insures you for, and then if your home insurance does have life insurance attached, what is the life insurance? If you need to, make sure, go on, compare the market and see the different life insurance policies, home insurance, and make sure it's specific for what you want. It is also, if you apply for home insurance or life insurance earlier, specifically life insurance, actually, if you apply for it earlier, before you have kids, before maybe as we're getting older, you might end up having a few minor things like high blood pressure. You might end up getting diabetes or liver problems. If you're able to start your life insurance early, you aren't listing that you have these health issues, and your life insurance will be significantly cheaper. So one of the things that I wanted to also stress is that if you do acquire a home, it's very, very important that you look at what your home insurance covers and what your life insurance covers, because what can happen is they can clash and then you won't be able to be covered by one. So looking at what each of them covers you for, insures you for, and then if your home insurance does have life insurance attached, what is the life insurance? If you need to, make sure, go on, compare the market and see the different life insurance policies, home insurance, and make sure it's specific for what you want. It is also, if you apply for home insurance or life insurance earlier, specifically life insurance, actually, if you apply for it earlier, before you have kids, before maybe as we're getting older, you might end up having a few minor things like high blood pressure. You might end up getting diabetes or liver problems. If you're able to start your life insurance early, you aren't listing that you have these health issues, and your life insurance will be significantly cheaper. So the next step in getting your house in order, which I recommend, is writing a will. A will, you can get will writing for free. Depending on where you work, there might be services from your workplace where you can get support with writing a will. If you have the means, you can consult with a lawyer to write your will. Or if anything, draft a will for yourself. Especially, this is mainly for when you start acquiring assets, you start acquiring things in your life, whether it be your car, and please, when you own it, when you get a mortgage, so once you purchase your first property, If you have stocks, bonds, ISAs, any of anything of that nature, please write a will. And like I said, you can draft this on Word and just say, okay, to such and such people, whether it be your friends, your sister, your brother, your children, specifically, please, guys, if you have kids, this is what I'm stressing is once you are married, once you have kids, just write the will. Write the will. No one is saying something is going to happen to you tomorrow, but as long as you have it, it's there. And then you give it to a lawyer, or I don't want to say a trusted person because people can tamper with things like that. So it's very important that it is someone that you really, really trust. But at the same time, if you know, okay, there's a potential that you're unwell, or you have a job that's very risky, that anything can happen, please let them know that you have a will written already. Funerals, please, guys, it's really, really essential that in your will you state how you would like your funeral to happen. Again, I know we don't like talking about it. But it will give clarity to your family how you would like to leave this earth, whether it's a rhinestone casket, whether it's, I know some people know in Ghana, there's a carpenter who creates crazy different designs of caskets. And not gonna lie, caskets are very expensive. Headstones are very, I said tombstones, but headstones are very expensive. So letting them know how you want to be sent off, whether you want a service of songs, a celebration of life, do you want a party, do you want to be cremated, do you want your ashes to be spread somewhere specific to you, do you want to be buried back in your home country, because a lot of us are immigrants. So especially for the first generation of immigrants that are here, some of them want to be laid to rest back home. So please have that conversation. And if you don't want to have that conversation, make sure it's specified in your will so your family are able to honor you in your legacy the right way. And what happens is, if you don't have a will, it's a free for all. All your assets will go to probate, and then your family will then have to go, through court proceedings to then be able to get access to your property. But you can also have a power of attorney, which this comes into place mainly when those who have ill health, are unable to make decisions on their own. So there's power of attorney legally, and also for their medical help, like making the choices. If you can as well, please get a power of attorney. And once you're still fully in capacity of your mind, it's very important to again sign yourself over to someone who you trust. So yeah, the next stage, and I think after getting your house in order, I would say, is your asset management. So once you've acquired the property, the cars, the whether it be gold, it could be your watches, it could be your designer handbags, it could be anything. Please make sure, one, in your will you write who you want to give things to, what you want to leave, if you want to give things to charity, but then also have a binder, right? This is what, from the experience that I went through, have everything in one place. I know sometimes people will say this might be a bit unsafe, but unless you're telling everybody, then yes, it's unsafe. But I would say the deed for your house. Who is your internet provider? Who is your energy provider? Who is your car lease with? All these things. Who you bank with as well. Where do you have stocks, ISA, all these bonds, the passwords, mainly because if you do pass away, your family or whoever you have left as the executor of your will then need to go through and do the admin. So that's notifying all of the bodies of you passing away, registering your death certificate, also, managing the asset. So this umbrella is basically everything is under asset management. And if you again make everything all in one place, once you leave, your loved ones will love you forever. Because when you're just like piecing things around, you have to call this person, they're saying okay, they don't have this, then also you might have to go and purchase, maybe like it's the deed, you have to then find that document. So if you're able to keep all your documents safe and all in one place in one binder, you're getting your house in order. Very tea. And also any debts that you may have, especially if you have ill health, any debts that you have outstanding, please also share or place that in the binder. And obviously if you're paying it off, just keep it updated from time to time. It could be a yearly an annual thing that you do when you're working out your finances for the year or the year to come, and you're projecting what you're going to do that year. Try your best to also make time to update that. Yeah. So once you've passed away, especially if you reside in the UK, once you pass away, like I said, you have to sort out the death certificate of your loved one, and that comes with a fee. One thing you must know, none of these things are free. So, having a life insurance or savings will help your family not only, pay for the funeral costs, but also any administration that comes with, processing your assets with the government. Because once you have the will, you will then need to register it with the government, and that is called grant of probate. So once, especially because my mother passed away, so it was very close to home, grant of probate, you will have a lot of forms to fill out. And also, if your assets are above £325,000, you will then be entitled to pay inheritance tax, which will be 40% of all of the assets that you have. So that cost will also need to come out. So having the life insurance is very paramount because it can cover these costs. If you have a mortgage and it's not paid down, the life insurance money can also go towards paying off the mortgage, so that your kids, your spouse is not pushed to sell the property or sell the assets and liquidate everything. And most times, if they don't have a will, they won't be able to do that, because they will be fighting to try and keep those properties and then have to liquidate it, maybe to pay off debts. So if you can, like I said, be transparent, have your things in order. So inheritance tax and probate are linked. I didn't know this before. To get probate, you have to pay inheritance tax. Obviously, once you fill out all the forms, and guys, it is very, very tedious. It is a very long process. And also, most people then inquire of an accountant and a lawyer. Obviously, if you have access to a lawyer already because of the will, then it's easier. But choosing the right lawyer is very, very important. I cannot stress this enough, because you can be advised wrongly and do the wrong thing. Bearing in mind, you have a time frame of which you need to register the probate, register inheritance tax, And obviously, probate may not be granted straight away. And that can hold up a lot of things. So being able to have guidance, especially on the accountant side of things, unless you're already an accountant, then you don't need to hire an accountant. But knowing the value of the properties, of the assets, the car, the bags, the shoes, the watches, the jewelry, the gold, knowing the value of all these things will also need to be listed in that inheritance tax form. So it's very important. And then once HMRC have received that, they will then let you know how much tax you owe. So you would then need to pay that either as a lump sum, or you will need to get on a payment plan. The same as well for like the funeral. I forgot to add earlier. Funerals as well. If you're unable to pay, there is also a funeral payment plan. And if that person no longer has any dependents, the state, like the council at which that person resides in, will then cover that funeral cost. So yeah, it's a lot of information, guys. So I know most times I would say people take it step by step, write a list of everything. But like I said, if you get your house in order beforehand, it will be a smooth sailing experience for your loved ones once that time does come. Because they're grieving, they're going through that change of not having you around anymore, and having to do all of this on top can also, make someone's mental state and mental health really go through it. So very, very important. So yes, for inheritance tax and probate, like I said, you could get on a payment plan, or you can pay as a lump sum. And to be granted probate, you have to pay off the inheritance tax, or make a payment on your payment plan with HMRC. Then once you have grant of probate, you now have legal rights, because the will has now been registered with the government. And you've notified them that this person has now passed away. You can then make decisions on that person's estate. Once you do so, depending on how the will was left is how much you would then be required to pay on your inheritance tax. So there are ways that you could reduce that 40% tax, which is through gifting. If you want to make sure, okay, you're going to gift this house to my daughter, or you're going to gift it to a charity, that reduces your tax. And then also having a trust. I know a lot of Americans do this, where they leave their properties in a trust, they leave their businesses in a trust. In the UK also, we have something called the irrevocable trust. So that can also reduce the amount of tax. And I know people don't really like to talk about these things. They don't really want you to know. But the wealthy, this is what they do. You need to catch up on game. They leave it in a trust, and that really bumps down the tax. But I think in the last year, the government was discussing removing inheritance tax. I don't know how true that is going to be in the next few years, but as of right now, it's still notwithstanding, like it's still happening. So once you've now been given how much you need to pay, you've been on your payment plan, you've got access to make decisions on the estate, you now need to manage the estate. And that is another ball game. Especially if you are from a big family, there's many of you in terms of siblings, or the will was left, something was left to an uncle, an auntie, your spouse, and everything was left to you, but the kids, you need to allocate it to the kids. You must uphold that person's last wishes. it's just the right thing to do. If you are the executor, and make sure all the beneficiaries of that person's will is upheld. So there's a lot of admin that goes into that as well. So again, take it day by day, knowing that okay, you're gonna do the right by this person that has now, passed on, and you want to make sure you discuss and have transparent conversations with each beneficiary saying XYZ. And usually what happens is the lawyer, if your will was left with a lawyer, which it should be, like I said, it's the best option. They will then have a real will hearing, and they will read out what was left to XYZ person in the family. Because one thing that, and if anybody watches Nollywood, I know we've all watched some movies of, someone's passed away or a spouse has passed away, and maybe the wife has married into the family and she has a kid, and the deceased person's brothers or sisters have come and collected the house, collected the cars, collected everything. Hey, that is one burden that you don't want to leave for someone. So it's very important that if you leave it with a lawyer, they will uphold that. But then also, you don't want any rebel lawyer, because sometimes people collect bribes. So it's very important that you try to do your due diligence, choosing the right people with sensitive topics like this. But yeah, once it's been allocated, then everyone starts moving on and continuing your legacy of, you've ran so that they can fly, or you've crawled so they can run. So I think those are some of the things that I would recommend people start getting your house in order when it comes to this. So yeah, I hope that this lands to the right person, honestly, and this is helpful, at least like a snapshot of what might be to come, what could come, if you lose a loved one. And then, as usual, I like to ask the audience questions, and then ask them myself too, answer them myself as well. So one of the questions I would ask is, what would you prefer? Would you prefer having a trust, or would you prefer gifting, or would you prefer just giving all of your wealth to a charity? Because your life insurance will still go to the family. You choose a beneficiary anyway, so they can pay off your mortgage if it's outstanding. But if you want to actually put it in their name or give it to them so that they inherit it, would you rather give it away, or would you let them keep it and, let them start their life like that? I think for me, in my life, I will be getting a trust. Don't quote me. God willing, I will get a trust. I think that is the safest way. And then you decide who are the trustees of your trust. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a loved one. It could be a charity. It could be anyone who can be the trustee of your trust. So yeah, that's how I would. But leave your comments down below what you would do. My second question is also, what are you investing in as part of your assets? I feel like most of us don't always future plan. And there's different things you can invest in. You can invest in, like I said, the most popular is real estate. Obviously we know about stocks and shares, we know about bonds, we know about gold, jewelry, land. Yeah. So what would you invest your money if you were able to get £100,000 today? What would you invest in? What's the first thing you would invest in? For me, I'm not too sure. I've always joked, like one joke in my family that I always have is I would buy land. Okay? One thing they cannot take away from you is land. If you own it, it is yours. But make sure it is yours, because you know people be scamming. So try to make sure the land is owned by you and not somebody else, and then you're just leasing it. So yeah. And yeah, that's all the questions I have for y'all today. Leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section about what you thought about today's episode. And then, as usual, we'll share one thing that we're grateful for today. So make sure you comment as well down below what you're grateful for today. And what I'm grateful for today is opportunities. I'm grateful that God always opens doors and opportunities for me, to do things, to change, to grow, to experience life. I think I'm very, very grateful to be alive, to still have every day to have a new opportunity and experience, to experience life. Yeah. So, with that being said, you can find me on all social media platforms, JXAde. And if this, like I said, resonates with you or you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to comment, subscribe, share with a friend, share with your family, you know, especially this episode, share with your family. Okay? Share it with one family member. In the next episode, we'll be talking about finding your tribe, therapy, and, you know, just becoming a better individual. So please remember, you are loved, you are valued, and you have a purpose in life. So please take up space. Thank you.